Hi everyone! Today was going to be a catch-up episode with Peter, my friend and former co-host of the podcast, born and raised in Belfast and living the good life with his girlfriend and 2 dogs at Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. Unfortunately, the audio of that recording turned out unsalvageable, so I just wanted to let you know briefly that Peter says hi, and him and his loved ones are doing well, and I miss that lake anytime I talk to him and see a picture. I hope we'll be able to record another catch-up episode in the not-too-distant future. For now, instead of it, I'm bringing you the puppy's birthday episode a month early. On March 24th, the 5 little Rebeldes are turning 1 year old. I wanted to give you an update on what they've been up to and interview the only English-speaking owner we have, Judge's Human in Minnesota. You'll learn more about Judge, formerly Oso, the purple color puppy, in a minute when I play you our conversation. First, let me tell you about the ones whose humans didn't make it on the podcast. Mari, the black collar female formerly known as Rebelde, lives closest to me and I see her most often. She went to Irving and has turned into a wonderful go-anywhere Mexico City dog. She's great with dogs and humans and gets to go to work with Irving at the Jiu-Jitsu and MMA gym he teaches at. She also gets to wrestle herself and has lots of human friends there. Irving has also started taking her on his bike rides, and when Chai stayed with the 2 of them while I was traveling the other week, they both got to head out with Irving and his bike. They're really good friends. Speaking of bikes, a few months ago, Irving and Mari stayed at his mom's apartment and he left his bike outside the front door. Mari went off barking and growling and scratching at that door in the middle of the night. Irving opened the door and a bike thief was carrying his bike down the stairs. He sent Mari after him and then caught up with both of them downstairs where she was bark and holding him. Go Mari. No training required for this. She just did it. She's amazing. Her name, by the way, isn't a breed reference but an anagram of Mila. Mila was Irving's heart dog, a pit bull who died of cancer briefly before we met. By the way, you may remember that Mali, rather than Chispa, went to Irving because Mali was the one puppy who showed mild noise sensitivity, and Mexico City is a quieter place than Santa Ana in Mexico State, where the other girl ended up moving. I'm excited to report that Mali now has several holidays under her collar and shows 0 noise sensitivity. The second Rebelde puppy who's in my life quite a bit is Doggy, the red collar boy. He lives with his dad, Game's novio, Drago, his human Eduardo and his family, and 3 female males in Naucalpan. I visit occasionally, and just like Mali, Doggy yodels in joy when he sees me. I had him with me for a week of training a couple months ago. The training goal was for him to learn not to leave the sidewalk unprompted, the way my dogs do and Eduardo's other males do as well. Doggy hadn't understood this concept, which led to his freedom being much more limited than that of Eduardo's other dogs, who are allowed a lot of free roaming in their street. Doggy would jump into the street though, so it was too dangerous for him. They work a lot, and like most people don't have a yard, so not being able to roam freely took away quite some life quality from Doggy. I taught him the concept in a week, and it was a great week because I got to see who he was growing up to be. He's neutral around dogs and people and did great going places and riding in the car. You can read about his week with me on my blog. When I took him back home, I spent a day with all his human household members, and we worked on staying on the sidewalk unless given permission to cross. He did well initially, and the behavior held up for a few weeks. He's doing well now. Let me just get this out of the way. So everything was fine until it wasn't. And he crossed the street unprompted, ending up in front of a car. Eduardo took him to the emergency vet. The lucky bastard didn't break a single bone. It was all scratches and bruises. By now, he's healed up fine. And the best news? He finally did learn his lesson in this single learning punishment event. He no longer steps off of the sidewalk unprompted and is now enjoying a much greater degree of freedom along with the other dogs in his home. The last time I saw him was just the other week. Game stayed with Eduardo while I traveled for a few days. I'm happy to report that Doggy is doing well. While he is a tsunami around the house, as he should be at his age, everyone is madly in love with him. This leaves 2 puppies. My very favorite one of the litter, Chispa, the blue collar girl. I was fondest of her because she was the bitiest of the little devils, and at just a few weeks of age, I could lift her up when she latched herself onto a sock of mine, and she wouldn't let go. I love grit like this. Chispa went to Miguel in Santa Ana, Hilotzingo. Miguel is someone I know because anytime I'm there, I'll stop to chat with him by the side of the road where he washes cars and buses. He loves game, and long before her breeding, he told me he wished he could one day have a dog like her. I haven't seen her since I dropped her off with Miguel, but I saw him once since. I've been to the town a few times, but he's not always there and doesn't have a phone. He lives in a different town and our relationship revolves only around his workplace. So the last time I saw Miguel, a few months ago, he told me Chispa was perfect. Her name is now Alpha. She wasn't with him back then, which made me a little sad. Originally, Miguel's plan had been to bring her to work every day. But not all of the bus drivers who dropped him off accepted her once she was a little bigger, so now she only gets to go once a week when a bus driver friend of his gives them a ride. The day I went, it wasn't Alpha's day. On the 4 work days she stays home, she has been put in charge of guarding a large plot of land, which she thrives at. She's also made a best friend, a black female mix. The two of them are inseparable. That's the story Miguel told me and I'm sharing with you. Maybe one day in the future I'll end up in Santa Ana the same day as Alpha. I don't want to impose or invite myself over to Miguel's place. That's his choice. I'm wishing him and Alpha all the best, and I hope they are having lots of fun and the most wonderful life possible. The last puppy I haven't heard of in a long time is Bravo, the green-collared boy. He was the biggest of all of them. Judge was the second biggest. It's funny how these things work out. Bravo was the one I thought was most likely to stay in my life because he went to the dad and brother of a friend. They live at a finca outside of Toluca. The last time I heard, Bravo was keeping his name. Unless things have changed, he's still Bravo. And he's made fast friends with my friend's teenage nieces and taken on the role of their protector. Unfortunately, my friend fell off of the face of the earth for a bit. He's studying, working, and an almost full-time caregiver to his sick mom. It's understandable that humoring me with dog stories isn't at the top of his priority list. Anyways, I didn't hear back the last few times I checked in with him, and because I don't want to bother folks, I'll let things be unless he reaches out. Like Alpha, I hope Bravo is leading a most wonderful life and bringing his humans a lot of joy. But for now, let's turn our attention to Judge, who at 8 weeks old flew home to Minneapolis with Joan. Welcome to the podcast, Joan. I'm so excited to have you on since you have one of Game's puppies. Before we get started, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience in any way you'd like? Your dogs, your pronouns, where you're located?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Joan. I live right now in Minnesota where it's very cold winter. I have a variety of dogs, mostly border collies, and we do lots of activities, agility, herding, some disc. I've done obedience in the past and a little bit of barn hunt. So I like to dabble in different things, but agility is kind of my main sport.
Nice. And which one of the puppies did you get?
I got the purple collar boy, Oso, and his name is now Judge.
His name is now Judge, and we are recording on February 6th. So
He's 10 and a half months old now, so he's in the throes of adolescence.
By the time I released it, they're probably going to be around, so I'm like hoping to release it around the 1 year mark.
Oh, well, yeah, I know it's coming up. It's going fast.
He may still be in the throes of adolescence.
I would imagine so.
How has his adolescence presented itself?
Well, I would say he was pretty mellow until maybe a month or month and a half ago. And so I've noticed just kind of around the 10-month mark or 9.5 months, he's gotten kind of more emotional, more kind of when he's dissatisfied, maybe a little whiny, a little barky, but big feelings about things, which I didn't really understand what big feelings meant until I had him in my life. I would say my previous border collies have had virtually no adolescence to speak of. They didn't get in any trouble around the house. They were pretty adult-like, didn't have high emotional feelings when they go out if they'd see something and react to things or feel like I have to report on it. So he's been a little bit of a learning curve, and he's a very sweet dog. He just, you can just see he's having a hard time. And I've taken some, listened to some lectures and been involved in some classes where they have been paying more attention nowadays to the brain development in these adolescent dogs and kind of how it affects them when they're learning sport foundation skills and just how they learn and, not to push them too young. And so you can kind of see it's just, every day is an adventure. His brain isn't fully formed. And, some days he makes good decisions. Some days he doesn't make good decisions. He's always trying, but some days it's just hard. For example, he knows how to back up. And so he has one of his little puppy conditioning exercises where he's backing up on a plank. He's been really good at it. And then one day we went down to do it and he just couldn't do it. He just couldn't back up. And he starts spinning around in circles and just, walking up the plank instead of backing up. And I'm like, okay, we're just going to put this aside. I'm like, can't do it today. It's okay. So I kind of expect some of that where things he knows how to do may or may not be there. But for the most part, that doesn't really happen to him. So I was a little bit surprised. But, good example of adolescent activity there.
So funny, yeah. It's like some parts of his brain are just currently under construction and not open for business.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to think of it.
The border collies, did they all just go from puppyhood into adulthood, basically?
They seem to. My youngest border collie is a very serious female, and we bred her. So she never, she didn't have any transition. So she was always in the house. She just seemed to always be kind of adult about things. I mean, not to say she's a very sensitive dog, but she's a sensitive adult too. So she didn't have these kind of acting out phases where, Judge will have these moments where I know he just wants my attention, so he'll go grab my hat off the table. And I know it's just because he wants me to get up out of my chair and go take it away from him, and do something else. So, he just has those moments where I don't think my other dogs have really had that. And it's pretty obvious where he's just kind of like looking around. He's like, I'm a little bored. We're not really doing anything. I think I'm just going to go grab something, make her get up.
Love it. Smart boy.
Yeah, and, it works. So, yeah.
He's training you.
Yeah, exactly. So, I know we've had discussions about giving him little timeouts to not encourage that attention seeking. And that's worked pretty well, although I have noticed a spike in it again. So he was really good after I did that initial work with him about giving him a little 1 minute timeout if he put his front paws up on the counter or a table or anything. The behavior really extinguished itself really quickly. And I noticed in the last couple of weeks, he started doing it again. And I think it's just because he's just full of hormones and feelings, and it's winter. So, there could be some not enough activity. Some days are hard with work and bad weather. So some of it could be that too. I do my best to tire him out.
Oh, for sure. I imagine the weather. My dogs are outside off leash every day. It's hard to imagine, like, I have never lived in a place that gets as cold as it gets where you are. Just like for myself, it's hard to imagine to have several days where it is so cold that the only outside thing that my dogs get to do is like pee. But for myself too.
Yeah.
I like walking and being outdoors in nature, even when it's not nature, then in the city. I'm still walking, I'm out there.
Right.
It's hard to imagine even as a human. Humans populated that state.
I know, it does kind of suck. But I have a lot of good winter gear. So today the temperature might not be that bad, but it's ridiculously windy. So if it wasn't windy, I could go out and walk. And actually, Judge, for coming from Mexico City, the dog really seems to embrace the cold. He doesn't really, he was rolling around in the snow, and he does not seem to get cold when we go out at lunchtime to play. He's chasing his toy. There's a little bit of snow on the ground, but it's cold, and he's perfectly happy out there. He doesn't act like he's cold at all. So.
I mean, I don't think the dogs would mind that much. It's more the humans. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, certain breeds would mind more than others.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. But like having a double coat, they're fine. You get in Celsius land between -20 and -30 degrees, right? On a regular basis for more than a day at a time.
Yeah. We're below zero in the Fahrenheit world here today with the wind. I mean, the temperature might be in the teens. And without the wind, if the sun is out and there's no wind, it's not that bad. You do kind of acclimate to it after living here for a while. So.
I feel like a little bit below 0 Celsius is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
0 Fahrenheit is almost -20 Celsius. That is cold.
Yeah.
My opinion.
Yes, it's cold.
I would imagine my dogs to be outside and happy either way because they have enough fur for that.
Right.
But I would not be outside and happy. I don't know if I would be outside and unhappy or inside and unhappy. I would not be happy either way. But
Right. Yeah. It's hard to be happy in the winter here.
Yeah, what do you do to keep them happy?
Well, this winter hasn't been as bad as some. So we've only had a few really cold days like today. So we've been able to go be outside, and they can play in the yard and run around, or we can go to the park and hike a little bit. So it hasn't been terrible. We had a handful of days in a row a few weeks ago where literally they were just going out to potty and coming in. So then I'd rely on treadmill, and like the older dogs, the adult dogs, they're okay to lie around for a few days. They don't really start getting too antsy. They're just like, okay. But for Judge, we do have a dog treadmill. So, he walks on it because he's still growing. So he can do that. And I have his little conditioning exercises. And then he's in some foundation puppy agility thing. So I can do his activities there. And, he's usually taking some kind of Fenzi class. And so we can do it. We try to do all his homework.
Yeah.
And just try to keep him busy. And then if I'm lucky, one of the older dogs might play with him a little bit. That seems to help take the edge off a little bit more than things that I can do. But he's certainly keen to come down we train in our little basement area in the winter. And he's always running to the basement door because he wants to go do something. So I think he doesn't mind coming down here and doing that.
Yeah. Do you play with him a lot, or do you leave that to the other dogs?
I play with him more than they do. Yeah, I have one or two who will play with him. The others are kind of like, you're big and rough and adolescent, and just stop.
Yeah.
But they don't play rough the way, like, they don't like to play as rough as he does. So border collies are more like, you can chase me, don't bang into me. But I have one who likes to play bitey face with him, so they'll lie on the floor and do that. That seems like after a while doing that, they tires them out a little bit.
Yeah. Playing tug or
Mm-hmm.
playing with another dog. I feel like that really fulfills something that other activities don't really get to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little less structure, a little more fun, maybe.
And the activity of it being a game that both players enjoy, I always get the impression that that does something, at least for these kinds of dogs,
Mm-hmm.
that training or walking or being, I think that doesn't scratch the same itch. That's
Mm-hmm.
just an observation. I have no paper to document that, but it's just interesting to me to observe that.
Yes, and I think too for him when he goes out hiking with another dog, it's more fun than if I just go by myself with him because I know he does a lot more running if I take another dog. If we're just walking, he's off leash, but he's not doing the same amount of running. He might run a little bit ahead and then come back, but he's not racing around, or because there's no one to chase. If you have two of them, then they're gonna engage in some chase and
Yeah.
zip around, and it looks like a lot more fun. And then I just kind of walk behind.
No, I think it is. Yeah. Like I was traveling for a couple days 2 weeks ago or last week or I don't know. I have no sense of time. But Chai and Game both stayed with one of the other puppies, the other two that I have frequent contact with.
Mhm.
Chai, the one she stayed with, Mali, who used to be Rebelde, the black collar female.
Mhm.
They had so much fun. And I think it is because Chai plays like a Malinois because she was basically raised by game.
Mhm.
So she learned to play rough. She's good. She's gentle with puppies in general. Like she likes playing rough, but she recognizes when someone is like a tiny baby puppy. So
Mhm.
she adapts to that puppy. And she did that with Chai when Chai was a puppy.
Mhm.
But she taught Chai to play in the way that she likes to play. Chai definitely put Mali in her place when she
Mhm.
went to take over, which was probably a good lesson for her to learn because she's an only dog. When I left with her, she slipped out and came after us and ran up to my car like, "No, I'm coming too." Very sweet. They had a lot of fun together
I
and
bet.
carried each other out. Game is an adult dog now, and Chai is still the younger one, so she is more playful than Game. Like Game will play with her, but it is usually Chai at this point who initiates or who would keep going
Mhm.
until Game shuts it down. But Molly was just the right match for her.
Mhm.
They had a good time together. And unfortunately, Game didn't really get to interact with her brother, Doggy, the red collar boy,
Mhm.
because she's about to go into heat
Oh.
and is already at the point where she smells very attractive, even though she's not in standing heat yet. But she is grumpy before she's actually in heat, like
Mhm.
2 weeks before, where she's just like, meh, leave me alone. She didn't get to have direct contact with the males of the household, including her son.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, but I'm sure she had a good time too. Eduardo, who is Doggy's person, let her sleep in his bed.
Oh,
And
nice.
they took her on long solo walks and said he really enjoyed it because she's so much more grown up than Doggy. Well, Doggy is also always looking to get into trouble. It's like, "Ah, this is a nice reprieve."
Yes. I know. We'll get through it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, Judge's growing up journey, how has it been as a puppy, as an adolescent, maybe compared to your border collies, maybe compared to your expectations, maybe just in general?
Until really adolescence took over pretty hard. He was a pretty easy puppy, very kind of cuddly for a Mal, I think, and he would sit on my lap when he was still small and easy to handle and pretty agreeable to things, which always surprised people like, oh, he sits on your lap, I didn't notice the breed differences so much until pretty recently. He was just kind of like any other puppy that I've had. And my first breed were Dobermans. So I have had big dogs in the past. So it's kind of nice to have a big dog again. I haven't had one in a while. I would say, as a really young puppy, he was really a lot like other puppies. And it was funny because his first class that he took online, right after I got him, I took Shade Weitzel's toy class because I wanted him to have really good toy skills right off the bat. I didn't want to do anything to mess that up. I wanted to start out clean with Shade's eyes on it and do everything properly. And it was so funny because he was so little. When we brought him home, he was so little. He was probably 10 weeks old when the class started, and he's so adorable in his little videos. But, I throw the toy, and he was like any other puppy. He'd like run the other way or, grab it and sit out there with it and chew on it. And, there was no bringing anything near me. And he liked to tug, but he's pretty gentle about it. I always felt like, I wasn't exerting any real pressure, and letting him win a lot. And I was always like, he's not tugging super hard and so it was really interesting. So he was kind of very much like a regular, it could have been, I think, any breed I've had. I didn't notice the differences so much when he was really, really young. And he does have terrific toy skills now. And I'm so happy I did that because it didn't take him long. And now he retrieves things and brings the toys right back to me in the yards. We can play fetch and he outs his toy beautifully so I can represent it to him. And when he strikes his toy, he does not hit hands. I'm super happy that I took that class right away, even though I have hilarious videos of me like crawling around on the floor begging him to come to me and really funny. I mean, to see where he is now, it's really great. I can take him to classes or seminars, and if I throw his toy, like he's going to come right back to me. He's not going to run around the room and stay away, and I don't have to put a leash on my toys or anything. So I'm really, really happy with that. I did all of that. So that was, I think, like I said, when he was really young, I didn't see a ton of difference between him and the other breeds I've had. He loved to work, which is great. He'd do anything or try anything, and he's pretty fearless. He likes things that make noise. So one of those little tippy Kato boards, and he loves to slam that thing and make noise, and he doesn't care if it moves. And he'd take his little in-person. Was in an in-person agility foundation, and they were learning to just put their feet on the end of the teeter and bang it, and he'd just be slamming into the thing any opportunity. So more noise. So he's in a lot of fun because he's always up for whatever you want to do and really likes to do things. And he's always really good in his crate as a young puppy. And he went a lot of places. In the car, he'd go with the other dogs to different. It was summertime, which was great. So if I was going to a herding lesson, he'd tag along, and he got exposed to some ducks, and he's done some of those things. So he's used to spending a lot of time in the car in a crate, and he's really good about it. I notice now that his adolescence, like he always in the house, he slept a lot when he was young, obviously, really young. So my work day wasn't quite as difficult because now it's harder because he's got more energy. And so now sometimes he's in the crate and he gets kind of like, gotta do something. So I work at home quite a bit. And so I try to make time for him at lunchtime so that he gets a break and some activity. And then, later in the afternoon, we do, go for a hike or do some training in the evening. And so trying to balance all of that. So he's gotten maybe a little less quiet in his crate at home, but it's an understandable protest. I mean, I totally get it. On the other hand, he can't be loose in the house. No. I'd have no house.
Yeah, he's got to earn that.
Yeah. So, and right now, no. So I think everyone's had the story where, you go to work and somehow you don't latch the puppy's crate properly and you come home and the puppy greets you at the door and maybe there's a little pee on the floor and, a shredded piece of cardboard. I have visions if that happened with him, I'd like that be like a cyclone went through the house, there'd be furniture everywhere.
You're lucky if you had a house.
Yeah. So he still needs to be monitored pretty closely when he's out. But so that's maybe one thing. He gets into stuff, and he's really funny because, and this is a thing I think I've heard this said about Malinois in some other podcast, that if you just hand them a ball or something or throw it for them, in the house, like just toss something, like they're not really all that interested in it, but they'll take it and jam it under a piece of furniture because then they want the work of getting it back out. And so he loves those. It's like a cliche. He loves those yellow foam balls. It's like every Malinois got the yellow foam ball, loves the ball. Oh boy. That's him.
Oh, nice.
Might have a delivery coming too, though. And so he'll take the ball, if I toss it to him in the house, he'll take it and he will go and jam it under this footstool that we have on a little desk. And then he proceeds to he jams the ball under there, and then he goes puts his neck and head under the steps. It's a plastic step stool, and he throws the step, pushes the step stool all around the kitchen, and makes a great racket. And at least I know where he is when he's doing that, because you can follow the noise. He's usually right next to me, but he loves to do that, and he will put that ball under things so that he has to work at getting it out. And so it's really funny that holds true to the stories I've heard about the breed, that they like a good challenge, and also likes to get on the couch and try to pop the cushions off, and then he'll try to run around the house with that. And so the giant seat cushions. So I kind of so when he goes down on the couch, I'm always like, can you come here? And he's like, and that's one of those times where I think he's doing it to make me get up.
Is he good at baiting you, or?
I think he's getting better at it. But it's kind of a minor thing, but I don't really want him hauling the furniture cushions around the house. So
also, you can easily destroy them, and then you need replacement, and that's kind of annoying.
Right. Yeah. So I think he likes things that are fabric. So I gotta watch that. So he dog beds, and he's pretty good about lying on the dog bed that's in our family room. In the evenings when we're watching TV, he's pretty good about lying on that. But I notice in the morning after we get up and he's out for a while with one of the other dogs who kind of plays with him while I have coffee and do a crossword puzzle, he before work, he's much more focused on getting into trouble in the morning because he's fresh.
Yeah.
So that's when he'll try running down on the couch or doing that kind of thing, jumping up and grabbing a hat. So he likes things that are fabric. So I watch that because I think he is a candidate for ingesting them. So I gotta make sure he doesn't swallow anything.
Yeah, and maybe lots of tug on fabric that is approved for having teeth on, and so he had an outlet for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, when his brother Doggy spent a week with me, it was a while ago. So he was still a lot younger, but he had the apartment where I'm now, that's not the one that you know. Rather than having doors with a handle that swing open, it's kind of like a screen door that you pull to the side, but it's made of some weird plastic that folds into what is that musical instrument?
Oh, accordion. Yeah.
Like an accordion.
Yeah. Okay, yep.
The door. And one of the first things he did, we was just he just ran right through one of those closed doors. And they're not see-through, they're brown.
I could see that.
But yeah, makes me remember, you forget, because Game is such a nice, well-balanced adult dog now. But yes, it's oh, right, yes.
Yeah, he's like a small bulldozer. Plows through anything.
Yeah, and also I definitely feel that the pain tolerance is a lot higher, or has been in both my adult mouths. For example, I'm playing fetch somewhere, whatever, and I'm walking home, and I'm are those bloody footprints? How did you tear your, where did you or scrape off your paw head?
Oh yeah.
And the dog only notices 45 minutes later, once they're on the couch and the adrenaline from having fun and having the rush is gone. It didn't stop them at all.
Yeah. I don't know if he's had anything like that yet, but it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. Or Game trying to go up some some rocky something when I'm hiking somewhere, and no, she really wants to go, and I'm yeah, you can do it, because I'm having fun watching my dog do seemingly physically impossible things, and then she keeps trying and trying and trying until I notice, oh no, you gotta stop this, you're bleeding there. And she's why? I want to keep going.
I can see that. Yeah. I don't. I guess he hasn't had anything too extreme yet, based on his age. But I could see him playing through.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think Mari, the Mexico City puppy, the
Hmm.
one I stayed with, she has the most freedom and the quote unquote easiest life because her human Irving, he is partial owner of a gym.
Hmm.
Like it's a jiu-jitsu and MMA gym.
Hmm.
So she goes anytime he goes.
Oh yeah.
She has learned from the very beginning, from puppyhood onwards, to be there and how to interact with the people there.
Hmm.
And there isn't really anything, the stuff there is pretty sturdy, right? So
Yeah. Perfect.
yeah, and it's not like you have this nice curtain or something that you can get into.
Right. Yeah. For computer
Um,
cords. Too many.
yeah, exactly. There are no computer cords, and there's always someone waiting their turn or taking a break who already knows the dog since puppyhood. A lot of the time, someone is up for, playing a little or engaging.
Hmm.
So the times when nobody does have time, she's okay, chilling.
Hmm.
Plus, it's never too cold in Mexico
Right.
City.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, I think your dog culture seems a lot more friendly too than here, I think,
yeah,
just
like
based on.
yeah, she already is off leash in many places and is like super good with dogs. Like that's so interesting. I think Judge, you mentioned, I think he had a hard time, right? With other.
Yeah. Yeah. He had a hard time in his in-person agility foundation class. They were all kind of adolescent dogs, and the room is really small, and there's a lot of them. And so a lot of them, they'd all come into the room and be like, blah, they'd all be like, ah, and then they'd all settle down. And he always worked fine, but it was just the kind of the coming and going or passing too close. And sometimes it looked like he wanted to play, and other times it was unsure what he wanted. Some of the dogs he seemed to like. One of them was really barky, and he didn't seem to like that one that much. But they were at the other end of the room. We stayed away from them. The culture here is so different. You're not supposed to be off leash anywhere, unless you're in a dog park, and I would never go to a dog park. If I'm hiking places where I'm the only person there, I trust my dogs off leash, so I'll take them off leash. But, if I see someone else with a dog, I put them back on leash. And I think there's a lot more, it seems to me anyway, that there's a lot more dog aggression or dog reactivity here. Sometimes when we go hiking, I don't like to go to some places where there are too many dogs, because a lot of dogs always act like they've never seen another dog, and it could be because they're frustrated and want to greet them, or because they don't want to greet them. And my adult dogs are used to going to a lot of shows. They're more neutral. They don't really care. They don't want to meet the new dog, but they can walk by without a problem. Where I've gotten, my dogs have gotten snarked at by a lot of, I guess, more like pet type dogs out walking on trails, and I don't really enjoy that. And I know Judge wouldn't enjoy it, so I'm trying to limit his exposure to that kind of thing. Also because he's so big, and if anything happens, I have the Malinois and they have something else, and it's going to be my fault regardless of whose fault it really is. So I'm trying to at least get through his adolescence, and he'll come out the other side and be more like his parents and just be not so emotional. And so we're working on a lot of that. We took another Frenzy class when I'm working on his ready to work and him ignoring things. And we're doing some pattern games out parking lots of shopping centers, and just getting him working around things from a distance, in places where I'm not as likely to encounter so many dogs. But, I had him in the parking lot of a sporting goods store near my house, and we were working, and we had worked up to kind of the sidewalk on one side of the store from the parking lot. And I was doing kind of like a Super Bowls kind of thing. And then it's a store that allows dogs inside, but he's not ready to go inside. And so he's working his thing, and some dog is going inside, and they're going toward the door, and they just went off on him, just started barking and lunging at him. And he was minding his own business, doing his pattern. And so then I haul him out of there fast, because I don't want him to react back. So there's a lot of that kind of thing. You try to set it up so carefully, and then someone comes along and wrecks it. But I saved it on that occasion. But I'm just trying to do a lot of that kind of work, because, ultimately I do want to do sports with him. And so, he's training for all these things, but he needs to be able to be comfortable in the environment and not be looking around so much. Like the breed, he's pretty vigilant. He likes to observe things with his eyes. So we're doing some things to encourage him to use his nose more for information gathering. So I have him in the foundation nose work class this session, and he's gone to a barn hunt lesson. And when he goes out in the park and he's off leash, like I often take him with my lab. They play pretty well together. And she's a dog that has done hunting and likes to use her nose and has a really good nose. So she'll go sniffing in piles of grass. And he'll come like, hey, what are you doing? He'll go sniff in the pile of grass, So I think she's kind of a good role model for him.
That is really good. Yeah, I love having that role model adult dog that is doing the things that I want the young dog to be starting to do too.
Yeah. I kind of wish that the dog culture was a little more European. I mean, I've observed, Mexico City now, and going to Europe, where the dogs are just walking around and everybody's like, hey, how's it going? And they just walk by, and nothing happens. Everybody's normal and chilled out. But I feel like here there's a lot of dogs and there's a lot of stressed out dogs, and for any number of reasons.
That's an interesting topic to think about, the dog culture. I'm European, then I lived for a little bit in Thailand and now in Latin America for a couple years. I've lived in the US briefly too, but my main exposure is to places that have a culture of pretty socially savvy dogs. Or that's the norm. Like, of course, not every dog every time, but it's an exception when a dog has major issues with other dogs or with people or whatever. Sometimes I just forget that it's not the norm in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess I've only ever lived in different parts of the US, but we did some agility in Europe. So we had a dog with us. I remember we were in Paris and we're just walking around and there's dogs off leash everywhere. So our dog was off leash because he wasn't going to go anywhere, and they just kind of sniff each other and be like, hey, then move on. And it was all very nice.
Yeah, today I was actually, it's interesting. One street that I often walk through on my way to a park that I like to go to, there's this hardware store and they have 3 little mixes. And my dogs know them. They know my dogs because past their whatever. So they greet each other, ignore each other. Everyone does their own business. Today, one of the little dogs came and was shooting out. And I was like, oh. And the hardware store person was like, what? Yelling. And then I kept going and I saw they had puppies. They had the puppies on the side of the street on a little puppy bed. Like they were the age where like around 3 weeks, I think. Like they looked just opened their eyes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they're on the sidewalk in a little enclosure, like see the world go by.
Mm-hmm.
But the mom, then I realized I haven't seen that dog out on the sidewalk in a little bit. So I hadn't realized she was probably with her puppies like inside.
Oh, yep.
Here. She was like, no.
Different approach to puppy rearing too. I think.
No, but I was like, oh, that's so amazing that they're here.
Yeah.
My dogs were very, I want to respect this. Can we like just, and then I cross the street with them. But I'm like, oh, these puppies are gonna do amazing. I err on the side, as you know, of more exposure rather than less exposure, because as a dog trainer, I work with dogs who often I think it's just a lack of environmental exposure. That's my interpretation. I mean, who knows? I can't ask the dog. But if I was a vet, I would probably err on the side of no, they have to have all their vaccines before I do anything or whatever. But I'm not a vet, so I don't see the dogs who die of parvo. I see the dogs who can't go anywhere and make everyone's life really difficult because they're afraid of everything, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So like that makes my dog trainer heart sing when I'm seeing these 3-week-old puppies on the sidewalk snuggling with each other at that age. That's all they can do. And the licking in the world. It's like, yes, that's amazing. You see all the people going by. There's probably a lot of people who will stop and maybe ask if they can hold one or pet one. There will be people with dogs going by. The hardware store person. I think today was probably the first time they did that because I walk that street almost every day. We'll probably have to figure out a way to keep the mom from going after every dog who walks by. But I'm like, yes.
Yeah, and I would say bringing Judge home at 8 weeks, he's always been very confident wherever he goes. He's never gone into a place and worried about it. He may now at this age, he goes everywhere. Maybe he thinks he's a little too confident because he's scanning for everything, like a police dog.
Well,
but he's never walked in anywhere and looked afraid. He's always been confident. He's different training places, and he's gone to his first couple of little short seminars in different training settings. And then he's camping in the summer and been to a couple of farms for herding lessons and training place for barn hunt where there's a dock diving going on. And I've never really seen him react to any of, he's certainly never been afraid of anything really. And he's really good at the vet. He's really good being handled. He's really easy to do his nails. He's shedding like crazy, so I've been brushing him a lot. He really actually seems to enjoy the brushing. We're working on the teeth so much. I know when he was teething, he didn't want us looking in his mouth very much. He would kind of fuss about that. But now I'm getting him interested in the toothbrushing. And so he's like, ooh, the toothpaste, yummy. So, and now I'm like, lift up his teeth and brush his teeth a little bit. So I want the vets to be able to look in his mouth. He's more easily. Yeah, he's always went for his vaccinations at the vet, and he was really easy to handle. They had no problems with him. And people can hold him we did a restrained recall in one puppy class. And they're like, okay, is it okay? Can we hold him? Because they were expecting maybe he was not, you couldn't touch him. And I'm like, like, oh no, he's fine. He's been really good with that kind of stuff. And I would say, like, from what I'm understanding of the breed, he loves me and he loves my husband and everybody else. Some of the people he met when he was really young, I have a couple of friends where he sees them more often and he might go up to them more, but he's more like, he's not a lab, like people are around and he's like, okay, but he doesn't really want them to touch him. I mean, he wouldn't be offended, but he doesn't really care to be pet by them, where he's like all over us, but it's what we want. I don't need him all over strangers. So
with the breed, some really would not like a stranger to come too close. I focused on that when they were little. You want to counter that tendency or something like that because you live in a world of humans and he's going to go to the vet and get his vaccines and his annual checkups or whatever. It's just so much easier if that's at least somewhat okay with the dog.
Yep.
Also, having students who have dogs, and especially breeds like this, who are not Goldens or Labs, it's hard on the vet and unfair on the vet. It's hard on the human and it's hard on the dog.
Yep.
It's not fair to see people struggling with this and working on this for such a long time until they feel comfortable with it when they could do so much fun stuff with their dog instead.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He's been really good. And, anything ahead in the future, like if he does agility, he's going to need to be able to be measured. So like a judge is going to need to at least touch his shoulders a little bit. I mean, nothing too invasive. Or if we do obedience, you do stand for exam or something, just any little thing. He doesn't seem to be particularly worried about. People don't really bother him. He might bark occasionally if we're out in public if he sees somebody funny looking, but but I think it's kind of normal.
His job.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Hey, there's someone over there. Hey.
And can you tell from because I know you've taken him so many places, like herding, sniffing barn hunt rats, introduction to nose work, agility foundations. What kind of thing does he seem to have the most fun with? Can you tell?
He seems to like everything. He seems to really enjoy the agility foundations. Everything's on the flat, so there's really no equipment except for like maybe banging on the end of the teeter. Yeah, I mean, because he's still growing. His growth will take a while to close. Just learning his directionals left and right, or if you're going to wrap a jump to the left, it's one word. If you're going to wrap to the right, it's another word. So like just learning some of the basic things and learning what a serpentine looks like with a jump bump on the floor between two wings. And that's stuff at least I can do in the basement. There's so many verbals now in agility's gotten so complicated. So there's a lot you can learn. He took a class and he has nice start line. So I'm trying to do all that unsexy stuff while he's a puppy, and nothing's maybe less fun than working on stays. So it's not bad. The way we did it, I actually enjoy the class. It's great. My 10-month-old puppy can stay and I can lead out to do his little exercise. It just makes the training a lot easier in the long run if you have some of the basic skills. He really likes that. Herding is, well, you've done herding, so it's complicated. So he's been out. He was exposed to ducks when he was really young, like, 8 weeks, and he liked chasing them around. He was very gentle, but he was like, oh, what are those? And he was definitely interested in them. I've had him out on sheep a few times. I haven't been in probably a month because winter. And he's on a long line that I hold. So just so I can keep him at an appropriate distance. And I go with one of my friends, and then I've been going to the same instructor for a long time. And each week they notice, they're like, yeah, he's a little more kind of engaged in this. The first couple times, maybe he was like, oh, I'm gonna eat some poo, and oh, what are those? And then get distracted, very typical young dog. But now he seems to kind of get the idea, like, oh, maybe I'm moving them. And if he punches the bubble a little, gets a little too far out on the line, and they start to move, he's like, oh, hey, I did that. So he's getting a little more excited, but we don't want him chasing anybody yet. So I'm controlling the line to keep, because we thought, well, at his size and speed, like I'm not going to be able to stop him. And also if he decides that that's really an awful lot of fun, we might not, it might be hard to.
I'm really curious about that. If you keep going, how he develops, if he learns, he started because of the way you've started long line and that's when he was really tiny and he never got to actually chase a sheep. If he will learn or realize that, oh yeah, this is a herding thing, if it's just a predatory thing for him. I don't know if you can tell yet in his body language.
Yeah, he doesn't really act like a predator. He acts more like, hey, that's exciting. And they ran. He doesn't act like he wants to go eat anybody. So from what we can see. And I do have him signed up for his first clinic in the summer. I think it's in June. And the clinician's wife raises and shows mals in herding. So specifically, one of my other border collies is going, but I picked that person because he's going to be used to the breed where a lot of herding people aren't, and they might get a little scared.
Yeah, but like I mean, it's a different herding style.
Yeah.
It's upright rather than like, using eyes.
Yep. So that'll be interesting. So I'm hoping to get him out some more when it warms up so that he'll have some more lessons under his belt by the time he goes. But he is slowly making progress, and herding is probably the slowest sport. I don't have my own stock, so I can go to a lesson, maybe once a week if the weather's good, or, maybe once a month in the winter, and just plug away at it and see what develops.
Yeah, I feel like once a week is if you want to make progress, you've got to go once a week.
Mhm.
Herding.
Yeah, for sure. It's a hard sport. So
Because it's so different from anything else. There's so much less that you can do without actually having stock.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some flat work things, but I need to probably do more of them outside where there's some space. So winter's not so good. So he seems to like that. He's very coordinated. I'm always surprised at like how incredibly coordinated he is for a puppy his size. He has a nice build and he's very proportional. So he didn't go through that gangly, awkward, ugly looking stage. He always seemed to grow and everything was in proportion. He learned how to catch his foam ball, and then he learned how to catch these soft gummy frisbee discs.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
He really enjoys chasing the rollers and he can catch them. So he's done a little bit of that just in the yard, disc stuff, but he really enjoys that. He seemed to like the barn hunt, kind of catching on to it. I mean, we're only in week 1 of the nose work thing, but he's really jamming his face right into the electrical box thing we're using. He likes to work. Once he knows what it is, he's game on and he'll do it. I've done a lot of pivoting for his rear end awareness. And so he knows how to pivot on both sides of me. So I think if I wanted to work on healing, like I think he'd have really pretty healing because he knows how to get into position. And I don't know if obedience will be our thing, but he likes to do everything. I haven't found anything that he was really like, ugh. Because I have had dogs who've been like, yeah, I don't like this. Yeah. I have one border collie who's a rescue, and I tried herding for years and, take her to lessons. And I finally realized like, this just isn't her sport. And that's okay.
How did she let you know? Did she just try to walk off or?
No, I think she wanted more chase, but it seemed like it was coming from a place of anxiety. She was stressed out about the sheep. It seemed more like fear. It took us a while to diagnose that. First, it seemed like, oh, she just wants to chase them and grip or bring them down or whatever. But then it seemed like they were causing her a lot of stress. And so it seemed like, well, maybe she's a little afraid and a little unsure on what to do. So we scrapped that. Finally, I've got to stop. I can't. This is not for her. And she loves barn. I know she's taken a barn hunt. She's really quite good at it. She likes it. She's my most Malinois like border collie, and so she likes to do things with me. And I think she doesn't care what it is so much. She likes to be active. And once she knows what the job is, she's like, oh yeah, let's do it. That's fun. And I think Judge is kind of like that. Like, yeah, let's do it.
Like I do like that in a dog.
Yeah, for sure.
Because then you get to choose a little bit too. Because I might have that idea that, oh yeah, I want to do this. But if the dog says I really don't want to do this, I probably wouldn't pursue it, like, because it's not fun if I'm the only one who wants to do it.
Right. Yeah. The last Doberman I had, he didn't like agility. He liked doing it at home in the yard, but he didn't like doing it at shows, and he'd get really ring stress and he was afraid and he'd try to run out of the rings. He just didn't want to be everybody watching him. So I'm like, okay, yeah, we're not doing agility anymore. You can do it at home for fun or whatever. Or he did a little bit of, there was one game back in one organization years ago that just had tunnels, and he could do that at a show. He thought that was fun, but he didn't want to do all the stuff. And I'm like, that's fine. We don't have to do it. And then I got a border collie. I'm like, that's fine.
Oh, and then you got hooked.
Yeah. Then I became a sports junkie. But I get it, and I think I have learned enough to listen to what they're telling me. Like, some dogs really just don't like some of the things we like. And I'm fortunate I can have more than one dog. And where I live, the winter may really stink here, but there's a lot of dog training here. There's a lot of training schools. There's a lot of instructors, a lot of fencing instructors who live in Minnesota. And so there's a lot of training resources. We get agility seminar presenters coming from Canada and Europe and all over the US. So, I mean, we have a lot of opportunity here, which is crazy,
Being amazed. On the one hand, it sounds like the perfect place to live if you're into dogs. But on the other hand, those winters, why there? How did that happen?
Right. Winter is the biggest downside, I think, of being here. And some years it's very long. So hopefully it'll be short this year.
Do you know about the history of how that much dog stuff and that many instructors and trainers and competitions and trials and seminars and clinics, how all of that ended up in Minnesota?
Don't really know. I mean, agility's grown a lot. I've been doing agility a little more than 20 years. So my first agility dog was a little min pin that I got from the shelter as a puppy. He was like a bomb-proof little monster. He was the best little dog. But back in those days, we didn't have as many training schools. A lot of them have opened in the last 10 to 15 years. And there weren't as many trials. There might have been like 4 or 5 big trials a year, in AKC agility. And I don't do as much AKC anymore. I
In
used to.
state or in the entire US?
No, in Minneapolis, Twin Cities area where I am. And now I think there's stuff almost every weekend. And some weekends there's multiple organizations. So there might be a UKI trial and an AKC trial in the Twin Cities on the same weekend for agility. And then there might be obedience somewhere else and nose work somewhere else in the Twin Cities. There are weekends in the summer that you got to pick what you want to do. You could go to agility, you could do barn hunt, you could do herding. So there's a lot. I'm not sure where it all came from.
And also that means that there are enough people really into sports for that to be possible. Nobody is going bankrupt because they open another agility school.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of resources here. It's a fun place to be. If you like to do dog activities, there's a lot of them going on. And sports I don't even really know about or do, but I hear people talk about. There's everything here, it seems like.
Would you say it's the agility capital of the US?
I don't know. I'm sure like the big metropolitan areas like on the East Coast, the New York, New Jersey area, I think there's a lot. And I think Texas has a lot of agility too, just from what I can tell. Yeah. And California, it's surprising just kind of where we're located geographically, population wise. In relation to the population, maybe we have kind of more per capita, if that makes sense. Than like the heavily populated, like if you're in the New York metro area, well, sure, there's going to be a lot of things within your driving radius, but there's a lot of people. Yeah. It seems like for the number of people here, we have way more opportunity than we should have.
I mean, it's awesome. Like, it would be nice to have, so yeah, you have your summer house.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And in the winter, you go, I don't know, somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's great. There's lots to do. Since COVID, I've really gotten into online classes because it's just so efficient and easy. And now I'm used to doing the videos, and it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I think a lot of people didn't realize online instructions, it's really effective. And for some, like, it depends on the issue. And also the handler, but because sometimes it is, oh, if I could just reach through that screen and put my hands on your dog and show you what I mean. But for people who already have good handling skills, online is, I personally feel like often more effective than in person because you can work wherever it makes sense if it's a behavior thing, for example. Rather than dragging your dog in a place that is just not ideal to build that foundation of XYZ. Or if the dog is nervous around people, but you are a good handler, I can coach you through how to do the thing online, while in person, I would just be an added stressor and it would be harder for the dog, maybe even for the person.
Yeah, it's been great. And you get access to people all over the world. You obviously not local, and Sharon Carroll in Australia, I've taken classes with her through Fenzi, and then,
It is like so fun to sometimes realize because you forget, or I forget that, oh, right, no, we're not in the same time zone at all, right?
Yeah. And like I can train my running dog walk with someone on the Canadian world team. I mean, it's kind of cool. Like you have access to things you would normally have, and then you can go out and do 5 minutes in the backyard, and it's better for the dog too. I come down at lunch and do a 2-minute training on the nose work box. It's great. That's all you should do. Whereas if you drive somewhere, this is for me anyway, if I'm going to invest the time to drive to a class, and if I have to rent space to do something because I don't have enough space, I'm going to overdo it and not do an optimal. I'm not going to quit after 2 minutes because then what am I going to do with the other 28 minutes I paid for?
Especially if you drove there. If driving there and back takes longer than the time you spent there, it already feels like, eh.
Yeah, exactly. In some ways, it's better for everybody. It's better for the dog. It's better for me. I still go to in-person classes, but I think I realized that maybe I gave it more value than I needed to in the original. I think you can get a lot done at home, and sometimes the dogs can mature without all the noise that presents itself in some of these in-person settings.
I like in-person settings for proofing, generalizing behaviors that I've already taught at home, not for teaching new behaviors. And also for teaching the dog to be in that kind of space around dogs inside a building or whatever, right? Or around dogs in this kind of picture, this picture. For the initial teaching, a group class, that's not a good learning environment for most dogs and people. But it is nice. I went to a conference a little bit back without a dog, just as an auditor. It's just so nice, like, to talk to everyone who's equally geeky. And you're like, wow, yeah, right. I haven't been doing that because online is so convenient.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And not having a dog with me was like, oh yeah, like this is really nice because I can, like, I don't actually really like socializing that much, but I like socializing with dog geeks. And honestly, I had forgotten how much I like doing that in person. So that's fun. It was so nice. I walked away filled with endorphins from Because usually it's a group of people and it's boring and you don't go deep into any topic. It's all so superficial, and then I need 3 days to recharge. But there it's like, oh my God, yes, I love that. I need to start doing that more often again.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I know. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, don't leave the house, but I'm like, that's okay too.
Oh, like that's okay too. That is nice. And I do like that. I like not having to, but I also enjoyed the reminder that I do actually enjoy
Yeah,
leaving the house for certain things.
right, for sure.
Yeah. Well, before we run out of time again, anything else judge related you would like to share or non-judge related?
Well, I gotta
Birth
say, I
of
mean,
everything
he's a
related?
fabulous puppy. I really enjoy him. He's a lot of fun. He is still very snuggly, he's definitely loves mommy. I come home and he's like, blah, mommy, and he has a hard time kind of calming himself down. But I know we'll get through that. So I think he's going to be a lot of fun in whatever he decides he likes to do, and he can do whatever he likes to do. It's been a really good experience. I think changing breeds kind of my bucket list puppy, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm so surprised, like you remember how like he was such a light colored puppy, and now his coloring has changed so much. He looks so different. He's much more, maybe he looks more a little more like Doggy now. He's
Yeah.
more of that darker, I don't know what the color they call it in males, if it's a red or mahogany color. I mean, he's not super dark. I have friends who have ones that have a lot of black on them, but he's not. But his face is blackened up quite a bit, and so he's not nearly as light. And all the hair that's shedding is that fine little light colored puppy hair, I think, or what undercoat. But yeah, he's been a joy. So really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm really happy that he got to come home with you. He's landed in the right place.
And he likes winter, so good for him.
Yeah, good for him. And I appreciate it, by the way, like just all your updates. It's just so nice to follow along a little bit of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. We bred one litter of puppies, and I have one, and my husband has one, and one is local, so we get to see him, so that's fun. And then we have the fourth one is in Canada, and when we see like little updates on Facebook or photos, we're like, oh look. So it's fun to know what they're doing.
Yeah, the two that are local to me, it's so nice anytime I get to see them. Like
Mhm.
two of them, they have kind of fallen off the radar, and I hope they're doing well. Not everyone wants that kind of relationship, and that's okay. I don't want to push people. It's your dog, it's not my dog. You know your dog best. I hope you're enjoying and having fun with your dog. Even though you're not wanting to stay in touch with me, that's okay with me. But it's so nice that 3 out of the 5 are kind of regulars in my life. One of them, and of course, Judge is the one who's furthest away. Um,
No, it's fun to see his brother too, just to kind of compare notes and what their behavior is like and their traits and that kind of thing.
yeah, but it's true, like about the color. Judge was the latest one. Now they all kind of look much more similar.
Yeah, and I haven't weighed him in a long time, so I don't actually know what he weighs. It's been quite a few months. So I keep meaning to drop by my vet's office to put him on the scale, but I think he's slowed down.
He is still for sure the biggest one. And
Yeah.
the other two, Mali and Doggy, one is a female and one is male. And I think they're pretty much the same size and weight-wise, which is interesting. Yeah, and Judge is like,
He's very beefy, like he's filling out. He has a big chest and he has a huge neck. He's heavy bone, thick legs, and he seems to have slowed down in the growth. So he might be kind of leveling out, not getting much bigger, just maybe filling out some more. Yeah. So, well, 10 and a half months.
even as a little puppy, he had that wide chest.
Yep, and the big paws.
Yeah. Like compared to the other boy who you also met, that's Doggy, the red color. This difference was already there and they were so small. It's so interesting.
Yep. So yeah, he's a good boy.
He's a good boy. Thank you for taking such good care of him.
Well, thank you. I know it takes a lot to trust people, especially when you knew me from class. It's kind of funny how the world works, right?
But I feel like that's a very good indicator. You do get to know, I mean, of course you don't really get to know people's lives, but it takes a certain kind of person to go out of their way to take an online class, and you learn, or I know what my students are doing with their dogs, right? I know if they're just pet dogs or if they're doing this and that, or if they're like really geeky people, like that is easy to see. If someone I didn't know just talked to me, I would not have that knowledge. And then you handling a dog and I see you handling that dog well and I see that relationship, that is way more than a random person and you talk to them and like gather information that way, I think. In the end, I feel like I need to trust my gut because most of the time that serves me well, and I'd rather trust one time too often than not enough and miss out on so much good stuff.
Yeah, so it was fun. Got to go to Mexico. We got to meet in person. It was like the world is not as big. So that was fun. And I made a friend.
If the winter gets too cold, I now have a guest room. So,
Oh, great. I won't fit in his bag anymore. Can't believe he ever fit in that airline bag.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Oh, well, we're gonna be cut off in a moment, so I'll just say goodbye and stop the recording, and then we can talk for 2 more minutes until he cuts us off.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on, and say hi to Judge and everyone else in your house.
All right.
Happy training, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful week. If you're enjoying this podcast and got a few minutes to spare, rate and write a little review on iTunes. It makes a big difference in terms of spreading the word, and it always makes me smile to read them.